Welcome back to Live from Paris here on France 24. James Creedon has joined me for Media Watch.
Evening, Chris.
Heading, unsurprisingly, across the English Channel and the latest on the phone hacking scandal. Of course, Rebekah Brooks going today. Some people said an entire paper was sacrificed to save her. Why has she finally stood down?
Well, that's right. This is 2 weeks after the scandal erupted, after the Guardian headlined with the fact that Millie Dowler, a 13-year-old girl, had been phone hacked, giving her family false hope that she was still alive. And it was what, I suppose, really just raised everybody's emotions, and it became a massive scandal in the UK. So why did it take 2 weeks? That is the question I suppose everyone's asking. The News of the World was shut down before Rebekah Brooks was. And I suppose there's two scenarios. One is that Murdoch was very close to Rebekah Brooks, considers her somewhat as a fifth daughter, and did everything he could to protect her until the bitter end, perhaps even leaving reason to one side. Even though in the beginning everybody was calling for her head, you know. And the second scenario is that it was a cynical move, I suppose, to keep her on, so that she would become the focus of all of the criticisms. She would become a firewall of sorts for Murdoch, so he might be protected from some of that public anger. And yes, so you know, perhaps in the way that Millie Dowler came to represent the victims, Rebekah Brooks might have been seen to represent the criminal, if you like, and the public anger. So that is one more cynical theory. The reality is that it was probably somewhere between the two. And you can see this photo here, which was all over the British press in the last week or two, where she looks like a kind of Cruella de Vil type figure. I'm pretty sure there's better photos of Rebekah Brooks out there, but she did seem to crystallise a lot of that public anger, and the press certainly went for her tooth and nail. And so the reality is it was probably somewhere between a reflex of protecting a close friend and perhaps using her to crystallise that public anger.
No shortage of pressure coming from outside a lot of opposition politicians, for example, after Mrs. Brooks very early on. Do you think there was pressure from inside the Murdoch camp as well?
I think there probably was. And in fact, this morning in the Daily Telegraph, they speak about Liz Murdoch. Now, she is the second daughter of Rupert, and apparently very close to Rebekah Brooks. They have a 10-year friendship. And Liz Murdoch apparently said of Rebekah, she effed the company. So you could conclude from that perhaps there is a certain amount of division emerging between Rebekah Brooks and the Murdoch family. But that being said, last Sunday, when Rupert Murdoch flew into London to deal with this crisis, a photographer asked him, what is your top priority? And he was appearing alongside Rebekah Brooks, and he said, she is. So really, the relationship between the two is very close.
There's been a lot going on in the last 24 hours. Do you think we've seen a kind of change of strategy from Mr. Murdoch?
Well, it's extraordinary, because yesterday afternoon, we learned that the FBI was due to launch an investigation in the US as to whether or not the News of the World had been involved in phone hacking of 9/11 victims. So that was already bad news, but still, later in the day, Murdoch gave his first long reaction to his newspaper, The Wall Street Journal, in which he said that only minor mistakes were made, that he was happy with his management of things, and that they would bounce back. So you would think from that he was still in this kind of very determined approach to not bow to pressure. Then, this morning, Rebekah Brooks goes. We hear that there's going to be a full-page ad in a lot of British newspapers tomorrow apologising. So he has apologised, essentially, and he's going to meet with the family of this 13-year-old girl, Millie Dowler. So yes, there is a change. There was a change in strategy. Hard to tell exactly where, but I think one key incident was the interview given to BBC Newsnight, their Newsnight programme, by the second biggest shareholder in News Corp. That is a Saudi prince. And I think we have footage of him, actually, and that interview in which he said, ethics are very important to me. Now, coming from, dare I say, the Saudi royal family. Anyway, now, in any case, he said that she would simply have to go. She would simply have to go. So, you know, from the second largest shareholder, 7% of News Corp, that could well have been the key incident that caused Rupert Murdoch to let go of Rebekah Brooks. Then his firewall is gone. So he has to perhaps apologise from that point onwards and accept some of the flack himself.
OK, I guess the answer to my next question may well be it's anybody's guess, but where do we go next?
That's right. And I mean, who knows? Who knows? Because there's a public inquiry that's been set up. There are criminal procedures underway. This is just in the UK. The Sun and the Sunday Times, other newspapers owned by Murdoch, have also been faced with allegations that perhaps they illegally procured information about Gordon Brown. So they could also end up being caught up in this mess. The FBI is investigating in the US. So this could go on and on and on. And the B-Sky B deal, which was Murdoch's big priority, that is dead in the water for the foreseeable future. So it doesn't look very good, really. Also, James Murdoch, who is the heir apparent, his management of this is somewhat criticised, you could say, as well. So maybe he won't end up holding on to the family business. So it's hard to say.
Okay, and very quickly before you go, James, you've got a little bit on the political fallout in The Guardian.
That's right. This is bad news as well for Cameron because, of course, the former editor of the News of the World was his communications director. That's Andy Coulson. He could still face court proceedings, and that could be a drip, drip, drip of bad news about Andy Coulson and his links to Cameron. So this could also affect David Cameron and his close ties with News International, a very good friend too of Rebecca Brooks. So it could have a political fallout as well.
James, thanks very much for your thoughts. More news and sports coming up after the break here on Live from Paris. Do stay with us.